Greetings from Hopalong Hollow. This is Jerry. Hello, friends. I'm glad to be back with you out here on the back courtyard. Back to a little bit of gardening after taking a very short and brief break from making videos. I just skipped 1 week out of respect for the death of a young Christian man, I'm sure as everybody knows by now, Charlie Kirk. Now, I did leave a message on my community post, which was viewed by quite a lot of people. And most of you, I want to thank you for your very gracious and kind words and your shared sympathy for what was lost. Not everybody was that kind, and that's just to be expected. That's okay. We all have differing opinions, and that's what the world is about. We do have different views, different opinions. I'm sorry that many of you decided that because you didn't like my opinion, you decided to unsubscribe from this channel, and we're sorry, you will be missed. Or they will be missed. They're not here anymore. But anyway, well, that is neither here nor there. I do know that nothing happens in this world that God does not allow to happen. Even evil deeds and horrors. The age-old question as to why does God allow evil cannot be answered in my video. But if we remember the words of Joseph in the Old Testament when speaking to his brothers who sold him into slavery decades earlier, he said, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." So I believe Charlie died for his faith, and his faith formed his politics and his views, and those views challenged some cultural views. I think he died a martyr, and he'll always be remembered. And I, for one, I believe, will be more courageous in speaking my faith, and I hope that if you're a Christian, you will too. Just remember John 15:18 and 19. If the world hates you, Jesus said this, if the world hates you, you know it hated me before it hated you. So let's move on to today's project. Our mission for the day is to fill up some pots and make some beautiful arrangements at the back of our house, where our courtyard, I'm sitting on the courtyard right now. We don't come back here that often, but this could be a really beautiful place if we get everything arranged nicely. So that is our goal for the day. I just don't know about this cat. I mean, it seems like this would be very uncomfortable laying in a bunch of lumpy bulbs, but these are bulbs I pulled out of the garden, I think over the spring, the summer, when I was digging new garden beds and planting perennials in there. I took all these bulbs out, and I just have had them in the refrigerator for months and months, but now they're ready to put into pots. So we've got all sorts of things here, daffodils, elephant garlic, we've got some tulips, which probably aren't very good. Let's see, what else? Muscaries, all sorts of little bulbs, such Spanish bluebells, and a kitty. A kitty. Should I plant you in a pot, young lady? So we're going to put all of these to use, and we're going to be putting them in a lot of pots and arranging this in some very, very beautiful ways. Separated all these excess bulbs that were pulled out of the garden. Muscaries, these would be light pale blues and purples and lavender colors. Of course, we have daffodils, which will be yellows. These are probably worthless tulip bulbs. Probably throw those in the compost. These are Spanish bluebells of different sizes, and some of these are no good. And all of these are alliums. Very, very large alliums, so don't know what we're going to do with those. I've also got several bags of tulips and daffodils that were not pulled out. Now, as much as I'd love to put pots of flowers for the winter and the spring all around the house, I simply don't have the money to buy thousands upon thousands of bulbs and plants. So I'm sticking to one area. I'm going to stick to one area and try to make it really spectacular just behind the house. So we have so many pots, and containers, and we have wonderful, wonderful little plants right here. I really concentrated on the violas and the pansies because they will last here through the winter. They'll keep on growing through the winter. They'll be dropping seeds. They'll actually be germinating in the snow, and they will carry on all the way through early summer here in East Tennessee. So these are just wonderful flowers. And they come in so many delightful and beautiful colors. So you can mix and match these with other types of flowers, and that's exactly what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be doing some layering in the pots with tulip bulbs and let's see, what else? Allium bulbs, that sort of thing. And we're going to be using some of the plants that are already growing here in these pots, and the dahlias. I've got dahlias over here in pots that haven't even bloomed yet, but there's plenty of room in the pot to add a couple more flowers. Before we begin, I want to introduce you to a couple really great books that I acquired earlier this year. This is Containers in the Garden by Klaus Dalby. He's the Danish gardener. You may have seen his YouTube channel. He makes the most magnificent combinations of containers along with beautiful gardens. But this book is really very, very gorgeous. Not only the photographs and everything, but you can learn a lot on how to put containers together. One of the main things that I've learned through experience and through perusing this book is you want to make a beautiful and pleasing composition by using a couple of different methods. And one of them is consistency in the color of the plants. So here you can see how these plants, colors and shades of green, have been repeated throughout this grouping of pots and containers. Just look at the beautiful chrysanthemums. I believe this is heather. And we've got these beautiful varieties. This looks like a moss, the different shades of green, but they are repeated all throughout this area. That's one way to stay consistent with your colors. But another way is to have different colors, but be consistent with the color and shape and style of your pots. Now, here this is consistent in both manners. You've got clay pots. Almost everything is a clay pot. A terracotta looking clay pot, and the colors here are greens and pale reds, or pale yellows and whites. But I know that he's also, oh, here we go again. These, you have consistency in not only the pots, but also all the white flowers. Now, I'm concentrating, this is something, I believe they set this up every year and they change the flowers. But in the spring, I think this is sitting outside the gate of his home. And right there on the sidewalk, they put all these incredible tulips and bulbs and hyacinths and alliums. But you can see that the colors have variety, but the pots are all consistent. So this is just something to keep in mind if you really want to harmonize your section that you're working on. So what do I want to do over here when I'm harmonizing? Because I have a lot of different colors in my flowers, but I pretty much stick to the same kind of pots. I like natural pots, clay pots, terracotta pots, and let me show you what pots I'm dealing with over here. I'm looking at clay pots, mostly terracotta, but I've also got some red clay pots in here, and I do love to put red up against our greenhouse because it gives it a great contrast. So pretty much natural Mexican pots. A lot of these were made in Mexico, and we have a great store out here near Knoxville that sells imported pots from Mexico, and some of them are just great. I've got a lot of them. Now this is what I've got here now, but I need to switch this all out with a few exceptions, and put my layering of plants in these pots. Now let me show you the other side over here. This is our other side, and the only other color of pot that I have introduced is this sort of turquoise thing, but it's got the red center of flower, which goes along with that wonderful red clay pot right there. More clay pots. beautiful heavy stone pots with a lot of green moss on it, my beautiful little squirrel bench, which I absolutely love. And here I put up a shelf, which I need to put a little bracket there in the middle before it gets too heavy. And I have two of these planters. Now, they were plastic terracotta. It just looked awful. It looked like plastic. So I spray painted it with a couple different layers of color to make it look a little bit more like it was either crockery or clay. And I think it works out anyway. I've got two of those. The second book I want to introduce you to today is called Pansies by Brenna Estrada. And this is another beautiful coffee table book, which contains all the information you would ever need to know about the beautiful and romantic pansy. This book will tell you everything you need to know about growing pansies and violas, as far as seeding, taking care of them, propagating them, taking care of the seeds, growing long-stemmed pansies. Did you know that there are long-stemmed pansies? I did not. And she shows you every single kind of pansy that you could absolutely think of. So it's not only a beautiful book, but it's actually got a lot of information on how to care for these plants. Gives you a new appreciation and love. But what I really want to talk about is the history. As you know, I love history, and I want to talk a little bit about the history of the pansy that I learned from this book. So what is the difference between a viola and a pansy? The author tells us that technically all pansies are violas, but not all violas are pansies. And to distinguish between them could be quite difficult and confusing, so we're not even going to try to do that. In my mind, violas and violets are tiny, and pansies are big. But I could be all wrong. That may not be the definition at all. But that is how I distinguish them from one another. There are over 600 species of viola, but most of us have only seen or heard of the very few that we find in the nurseries. In the court of Elizabeth I, the paintings in the halls often featured pansies and violas. They were also quite often embroidered in the Queen's gowns. In fact, according to the book, when Princess Elizabeth was just 11 years old, she cover-stitched the flowers on the prayer book of Catherine Parr, the final wife of Henry VIII. Pansies and violas have a long and esteemed history. They're often featured in art throughout the ages, and fashion, and decor. They also have a great sentimental value. How many pansies have you seen pressed into a flower book between the pages of poetry? They also have a long history in apothecary and are also quite edible. They're very beautiful in a salad. Now, the garden pansy was hybridized in 1812. That is how we have all these beautiful varieties as opposed to the wild viola or violet that I often show you from my garden. The purples and the blues, they're one color and they grow wild around here. Those are violets or violas. The pansies, as you can see, have been hybridized to get all these wonderful colors and shades. But do they have a scent? Well, I picked a couple of these up to find out. This one, and I'm sorry that I don't know the names of any of these, they just simply were not marked in the packages, has no scent at all. The blue one has no scent at all. The purple one does. It has quite a soft, sort of a sweet scent, but this yellow one is yellow and deep, deep burgundy. Has the scent of a rose, and I noticed it as soon as I picked these up at the nursery. I could smell them without even bringing it up to my nostrils. So some pansies are scented and some are not. But aren't they just lovely and charming? Oh my gosh, how can you resist? How can you resist that little face right there? They really do have a little face. James and I moved this wicker furniture from off the lawn so we could bring it back here and cover it over the winter. Ever since then, my cats have just gone insane. They love it over here. They just simply love it over here. Pansies are beautiful in a flower arrangement. There are some long-stemmed varieties. Just look at these pansies mixed with the dahlias and the roses. Great for decorating pastries and cakes, soups, cookies, salads most of all. They were used in apothecary, and I don't think any flower is as pretty when pressed in a flower press than pansies. In fact, that's what I'll be doing with these little pansies right here. I'll get my flower press out and put these in. Have you ever seen a cuter flower than a pansy? I haven't. Look at that face. Unless it's a viola. Of course, you know one of our dogs is named Viola. And that's because I love violas and I love the word viola. Anyway, we have a nursery nearby. That's actually a feed and seed store and a greenhouse. And when they bring in their pansies and their violas, they have such a great selection with great prices. So we've got so many beautiful little babies to put into the pots today. And we're going to combine them with chrysanthemums and marigolds, which will not last through the winter, but they will last through October, most likely, and maybe early November. We've also got nasturtiums that are growing, which will last for a little while longer, and maybe we will get some herbs planted with these as well that like the winter, such as parsley, cilantro. We can plant all of these things together in pots, and we've also got dahlias that I planted pretty late in the season. And so they're just now starting to open up their buds. And so all these combinations are going to be very, very attractive. But the goal here is to plant the pots so that something will be blooming in those pots from now all the way up through spring. Because they're so stunning and charming and lovely. I almost hesitate to plant them, but the beautiful thing about these flowers is they really multiply pretty quickly in the garden. So even if you just put in 4 or 5, or you just buy a 6-pack like this, yeah, that's a nice 6-pack full of some very, very healthy pansies. I mean, and you put these in a little section in your garden, they really will spread. Now, since many of the things that will be planted in these pots will be tulip bulbs and daffodils, I wanted to talk for a minute about tulip bulb prices. For many, many years, I've purchased my bulbs from Netherlands Bulb Company online, and they've been very good bulbs, but I'm noticing here this year the prices certainly have gone up since I started. For 100 bulbs, they start at $55 for 100 bulbs, and then the prices vary and go up from there. So, I think when I first started purchasing from them, they were $35 for 100 bulbs. So I decided to change this year, and I just picked up some of these cheaper bulbs at Walmart here. I got 25 bulbs for $12 right here. It's a decent sized bulb. As you can see, it's a decent sized bulb. And here, I believe this came from Lowe's or Home Depot, don't remember. This one, tulips, I got 35 bulbs for $19. But the best deal I found of all was a box of 100 bulbs from Amazon for $37. And these bulbs also look like a fairly good size. There could be some baddies in here, but there always are, no matter where you buy them from. So we will see what happens as far as the growth habit on these, and if they turn out to be really nice tulips, then there's no point in spending extra money on bulbs when you can get them a lot less expensively. And those are beautiful colors, aren't they? So once again, we're working with violets, pansies. We're working with marigolds that were dug out of the garden, chrysanthemums, which you can find just about anywhere. Most of all, there's blanket flowers. I just picked those up because they had a good sale going on. And all sorts of bulbs. And all sorts of pots. So I'll do the pots first and rearrange them when they're all filled up. I went into the house for a few minutes and the peacock came over here and started chewing up this ornamental cabbage right off the bat. This is what it's supposed to look like. And this is what this one looks like now. So these are definitely going up into a flower box under the window where hopefully he won't get to it. So naughty about some things. My peacocks. So I'm going to start out right away by putting these ornamental cabbages mixed in with some pansies in the window box and also some bulbs. So basically, this is what I'm doing. I've got my window box, I've got my chewed up ornamental cabbage right smack in the middle, and I am going to layer some Spanish bluebell bulbs down around the cabbage. Not very many, maybe no more than 8 in this whole bed. But these are some that I dug up. So I'm going to use these, and here's the idea. The idea is that these bulbs will start to come up in the spring. This ornamental cabbage will probably not even be alive anymore, especially if the peacocks keep getting a hold of it. But the bulbs will begin to come up, and they'll start poking through in early, probably April. But my pansies are going to be on top of that. Now the pansies will continue to grow, but those Spanish bluebells will poke right up through the pansy plants, and they will be much taller once they bloom. They're spikes, blue spikes, and they're beautiful, and they will poke up amongst the pansies, and we'll still have that. And we'll get the spring colors going, which will be the blues and the purples and the lavenders. I'll put another layer of soil in there and put my pansies in. So here I have a nice medium-sized pot. I've got probably 12 flower tulip bulbs in here. This is the Easter blend, so it's a pale yellows, pinks, and a sort of an orange color. I'm going to put plant right on top of that. Most likely one of these chrysanthemums. By the time that chrysanthemum is done, which, like I said, they don't last that long around here, maybe the end of October, then it'll be gone. I'll pull it out of the pot, probably try to overwinter it somewhere, and then top this off again and put more pansies on the top. Over here, in this little pot, I've used the little muscaries. And you know, they are already coming up in the front garden, so. Here I have a very large pot with a climbing rose in it. But I've got a lot of space in there, so I'm going to push some daffodil bulbs way down into the soil, and then I'm going to put in violas and pansies on top of that. Here we have the long trough that runs against the wall. I always plant tulip bulbs in here, sweet peas, and marigolds, but it's also a great nursery bed. So this is a good time between the degrees of, I think it was 65 and 68 degrees is when pansy seeds germinate best. So I'll put the tulip bulbs, more tulip bulbs in here, and put some pansy seeds in here as well. We might as well just fill this place with as many pansies as we can. And the beautiful thing about the pansies is they really will spread. And as spring comes, you can divide them and put them in other parts of your garden. So it's just an all-around wonderful, beautiful little plant. I love the nasturtium leaves. I'm not that crazy about the nasturtium flowers, but I absolutely love the leaves. And they look great running alongside all these pots of pansies and the flower box. With our semi-devoured cabbages. That will grow back, I hope. Section of the wall. Well, I don't know if it's spectacular, but it looks pretty good, I think. And just remember that these pansies will fill in those pots. They would just fill them in. And you'll even be able to split them up and put them in other gardens within a matter of weeks, really. So lots of combinations here. Now, as far as the pots, you can see the similarity in the pots, the clay pots, the Mexican pots. They are different sizes. You do want different sizes. That makes it more interesting. But you do want to stick with the same style of pot. You know, it's really not necessary to fill your entire area with pansies. If you just have some simple pots with pansies in them in your windowsill, it's absolutely beautiful. They're just charming. Just remember that if you're underplanting with bulbs, make sure you mark somewhere what you put in there so that you know what's going to be coming up. Purple tulips will be coming up here with a beautiful combination of purple and yellow pansies. And here we have the perennial blanket flower. Now, these are not my standard colors. I like blues and pinks and pastels, but it's autumn, and this is what you can find in the nursery because these are autumn colors, but it helps to use the opposite color on the color wheel. So you've got your oranges mixed with your yellows and your blues and your purples, and it just makes it a lot more dramatic. And these marigolds, bright orange, is not my favorite, but they look great when combined with the purple pansies below. And those were just plants I dug up from our tomato patch. So actually, I think it turned out pretty nicely. And I'm still not finished because I still have all these. Really great is when you have filled all your pots and you still have leftovers. So these will be going in another garden, probably the window box under the kitchen window. Well, next week I will be 72 years old, and this is my birthday present. That's all I want. Got the pansies in. It's time to sit back and enjoy a cup of tea. This is a brand I showed you last year. This is an Australian tea called T2. And the package is a gift package which contains a beautiful cup, mug, and many different varieties of tea, for example. We've got Sleep Tight, Morning Sunshine, black tea, herbal tea, flavored black tea in a bag, Melbourne breakfast. I think we'll try the New York breakfast tea in this beautiful mug. Son and daughter-in-law and my little grandson live in Australia. And they sent me this tea. So I'm just going to sit here and sip my tea for a few minutes while I enjoy these beautiful colors up against the wall. And also in this little pot, look at that dahlia. That dahlia, those just started opening. I think it's called Cornell Bronze. I could be wrong. But look at the beautiful contrast from that bright orange and this purple salvia and those lovely little pansies and the marigolds all together with great contrasting colors. That's something you really want to think about when you're putting together a bouquet or a garden. Then we're going to go upstairs and we're going to look at our antique of the day, which is going to be something you may have never seen before. So we'll be doing that in just a few minutes. Our antique of the week are these little heads that you see right here. This is up in the bathroom. And let's take a look at them. Wonder if you have any idea what these are. These are hat stands. Now, I have been collecting antiques most of my life since I was a child because of my mother. And I never have seen these in an antique store. I got these from a friend of mine. She and her husband had the most incredible collection of antiques. She had a large grouping of these little hat stands. And she traded me these three for some of my artwork. You can see that this has a silver or a satin base here on top of wood. They're not marked as to where they were made, but I read somewhere that they were made in Germany. So the indication of the age on these is pretty easy to decipher. Look at the hair. Now this is probably some kind of flax or wool. It actually feels like flax hair, but look at that style plastered down to the head. Look at the tiny little red lips and the thin eyebrows. The same with this one. I cannot remember the name of this hairstyle. I'm sure some of you can remember this wavy hairstyle plastered to the head practically. Now the hats that they wore were called cloche hats, and they were very small hats also that were tight on the head so as not to disturb that hairdo. It would just keep it right in place. So when you took off your hat, you still had your hair in exactly the manner you wanted it. But look at her face. She's sweet. But my favorite is this one. Look at the eyes. Look at the sweet eyes on this face. So lifelike, little rosy cheeks. You can see that the beauty standards of that time were quite different than the beauty standards of this time. We have these nice thin eyebrows and that beautiful little heart-shaped mouth. Very delicate lips. I think it's so pretty. And here she's wearing a little cloche hat, and her hair is in little ringlets, also probably plastered to her head if she were to take that hat off. Now these were all got a wooden dowel and mounted on wood as well, but as I said, no markings so as to know where these were produced, so I really couldn't find much information on them except that they were called flapper hat stands. So once you put the hat on there, generally, with this one in particular, if you put a hat on her head, it would completely cover her face. But by putting a little cloche hat on the top of this one as your hat stand, you'd still be able to see this lovely little character here. So I don't really know what these price ranges are. You might be able to find some. I never see them in antique stores, but I have seen a few on eBay, ranging generally from $50 and up. So I think I was pretty lucky to get this little trio here many years ago from some of my friends up in Pennsylvania, but her collection was huge. And I thought I got a pretty good deal. She got some of my original artwork, and I got these beautiful little flapper hat stands. So that's our antique of the day, making it a pretty quick one because the other part of the video was so long. So thank you for joining me. I hope you're still here. If you are, I sure appreciate every single one of you, and I'll see you next time here in Hopalong Hollow. Bye-bye.